Yeah, as John says, my name's Russell. And thank you very much for rocking up on a very warm Tuesday morning to hear me talk about and waffle about project management for a while. I think I've got some slides being shown at the moment. I'm the founder and managing director of a training company called QRB. We do lots of different sort of training courses and consultancy in the kind of project management and IT service management arena. I was asked to just pop along this morning and just talk a little bit about project management and how it's kind of affected me and how we use it and what we mean by it and how do we look at moving into it perhaps and the kind of skill sets that we actually need for it. Now, I can talk about this mainly because I've been in sort of IT service management and I've been around projects for quite a few years now. You can see that I mentioned that I started my career back in 1984 when I was about 3 years old, obviously. And I started working on mainframes and actually talking about this the other day. Our mainframe technology back then was really the early beginnings of cloud technology that we think is a relatively recent invention. But back then we had a box where we used to process everything. We used to handle all the shared files, and essentially there were kind of dumb terminals attached to it that didn't do any processing work whatsoever. Unfortunately, cloud technology back then was more like the steam from your kettle rather than the cumulus that we could see up in the sky. So, really the kind of stuff that's been hanging around IT has been there for a bit. It's just that the technology has changed over all of those years. And I started as an operator. I very soon got into IT management. And what I found when I got into IT management was just because I had the word manager in my job title, I suddenly became involved in projects. Projects being the way that we introduce change into our organizations in one way, shape, or form. So I kind of got sucked into the dark side of project management somehow, very gradually to start with, but then became sort of like full-time project management before I was asked to come and talk about project management for a living. And I've worked for various organizations, some sort of large, some not so large. There's just a few I've mentioned on the bottom there of organizations that I've worked with over time, doing lots of projects of lots of different sizes, some of them quite small and very local, others quite big, multinational, multi-million budget projects. So the variety has been there. However, how I manage them has been very similar. I have a kind of standardized approach to the way we do this and the way we manage project work in particular. But what is this? What is this thing, project? I've heard this word used so many times in my career, and I've heard this word project being used sometimes not within the context of how I think a project is. I used to have a list of things on my responsibilities as part of my job role. And when I used to go for my annual appraisal with my manager, we used to sit and we used to look down this list. And he used to appraise me as to how well or how not so well I'd done on actually achieving my responsibilities over the last year. And there was a column on this report, and it said end date, or target date, or something like that. And for about 80% of the list, the phrase ongoing was in there. Like it didn't have an end date. Something like I used to produce a set of management reports for a senior management team like every single month, and it was on my ongoing list. And this is something that we do repetitively. And when somebody wanted a change to this report, like another little column on it or whatever, they'd say, "I'll go and see Russ. That's Russ's project." And that's not a project. That's day to day. That's business as usual. But this word project got used in a kind of a way to explain just work that somebody was doing. And actually, we use the word project in a very, very defined way. A project is not an ongoing piece of work. It is something where we say, we start here, we do this work, we end here. When we've done this particular thing, when we've delivered a particular product, we can say we're finished. And the project then will close down. It has a defined start, it has a defined end. There's a set of activities we do that is specifically focused on delivering what we want. And we define what we want. So we can actually say, this is what we're doing here. This is this particular piece of work that will use an amount of resource like money and people and stuff like that, where we say there's a limit to this. There's not a bottomless pit of money. There is no magic money urn where you remove the last £5 note out of it and it automatically fills to the top again. That doesn't happen. If we have a very defined amount of money to work with, I can't drag people in off the street when I'm short of people resource. There's a very defined level of people around. And quite often, these people have got other things to do than work on my stuff, on my project. So working with these kind of resources is what we do when we manage projects. And with people, we need to be able to indicate to them what we're expecting them to do for us. So there's a structure to our project where we need to be able to delegate work and reporting happens and all of those kind of areas. So for the project itself, just for this piece of work, we have a team and we have like a little business that is just there to deliver the things that we want. They're all unique. There's not one of them, two of them ever the same. Even if I'm delivering the same kind of equipment and infrastructure, every single project goes into a different location with different people, and there's all kinds of things around projects that make each and every one of them a unique piece of work. They're not two of them are identical. And actually, it's what makes project management quite interesting is that you never really get the same thing happening all of the time. It's all new on every single project, and new challenges and new things to tackle. It's what makes the variety in what we do within project management. They're all risky as well. projects are projects are here to introduce some kind of change to us. We're either going to get a new product out of this, a new thing, or we might be modifying something that we already use, but we want to make it better. Or we might be taking something away. We might be removing something from our infrastructure in some way. And whenever we do this, we always introduce an element of uncertainty. The crucial thing when we manage a project or when we look at project is that we do need to know what we're aiming for. And here we have a triangle. And let's face it, it's a project management presentation. It wouldn't be complete without a triangle. And here's mine. It sits in a circle. Because these are kind of four elements that we aim to deliver to. And actually even with business as usual work and our normal day to day, if somebody asks me to do something, these are the four things that I really want to have an understanding of. Yeah. Well, when do you want it? What's the budget for it? What does it need to do in terms of quality? And what is it you need delivering, which is in terms of scope? Now, in project management, we aim to deliver projects within any targets that we're set on these kind of objectives. Sometimes one or more of them is more important than the others. Sometimes time is the crucial driving factor. The year 2000 projects, for example, had to be finished by the end of 1999. There wasn't anybody we could ring to ask for an extension to that deadline. So, there's sometimes some of these are more important than others. Now, actually, when we look at these elements, there are two different styles of managing a project that really come from these four things. There's one style of project management where we will fix the scope. So the scope of the project doesn't change. And we don't deliver the project until we have finished everything that's on it. We develop that project in a very linear style. It has a very one-way movement to it. So the project starts and we might do a bit of specification, we might do a bit of design, we might build something, we might do some training, and then we go live with everything that we built. It's a bit like thinking of a river that flows in one direction until it comes to a cliff, and then it delivers all of its water all in one go. Whoomp. We call this style of project management waterfall because it's just like a waterfall delivery. So if we're going to fix the scope, this is how the project runs and how we manage it. Now, if I'm going to fix the scope, it does mean that my time, my cost, and my quality do need to be variable. Because if I've got that element of scope fixed, I do need to have some flexibility in the other elements to make that happen. Now, there is another way of looking at this. The other way of looking at this is to say, well, actually, let's fix the time and the cost, and to a certain extent, the quality. So let's make the triangle very iron, if you like, very unpliable entity. Which means that if I'm going to deliver to a set time to an absolute set cost, then I'm going to have to flex something because I can't have all of these being fixed. So scope becomes my variable. So I look at what's important. I look at what the customers really do require. What is an absolute essential for them. So if I don't deliver it, I may as well not bother. But there's other things. I mean, there's some things that we deliver on projects that are quite important, but we could probably do without them. And then there's the other kind of nice to have deliverables that are the kind of flashy lights and bells and whistles that if we didn't have them, okay, it wouldn't look as nice, but we're not going to miss them very much. Because if I look at my car and I look at the buttons in my car, I think there's buttons in my car I've never pressed since the day I've had it. So, the customers don't really need everything. So our scope becomes flexible, but it does mean that we can fix our time and our cost. And we deliver this in a different kind of style. We don't deliver it in one development pipeline. What we do is we shorten the development pipeline. So we deliver not all of the scope at the first deliverable, but we deliver early. And what we do is we get feedback from that deliverable. And we use that feedback into the future development on the project. So the next bit of the scope gets done and that gets delivered. Again, feedback is gained. So our development goes in cycles. It's what we call iterative development and is the basis really of agile project management. Agile is a particular way of working in organizations. Agile was developed really as a kind of a day-to-day business as usual sort of mindset for helping us pull work through our system, but to do it quickly and do it in very defined time box constraints or time box limits. We could use this concept in projects. We could use it in this iterative sort of development style. So when it comes to delivering these particular objectives, these variables, there's two ways of looking at it, either that waterfall approach or there's that iterative development style. So those are the two big kind of development types that we have. Either one needs to be managed. Either way we do this, whether we do this waterfall or whether we do this agile, everything has to be managed. And we have a role that's filled by a person trying to keep their head above water while the fish are nibbling at their toes. So, project managers have to coordinate all of this stuff. So if you want to be a project manager, now, you might set out to be a project manager. You might be thinking, oh, that's an aspiration for me in my career. It's I want to be a project manager. I never had that. When I started in IT, I was an operator. I wanted to be the best operator that there was. Yeah, had aspirations of moving into management, but I had no idea I was going to get pulled into projects. And having been pulled into projects, I actually found I quite enjoyed it. So I ended up being a project manager rather than I set out to be one. Um, the second way of that is a very popular way into project management. You seem to get sort of pulled into them rather than be set out. But either way, when I became a project manager, um, there was a certain number of things that I found I had to do. And if you do set out to move into projects, whether you're looking at being team members or team managers or project managers or any of the other roles that get involved, if you're moving into project management or you want to get there, and I often do this on my project management courses, they say, like, these are the things that you need to display on your CV. These are the things that a prospective employer will be looking for when they're looking for a project manager. Yeah, if I was to go back into project management as a full-time job, then when I apply, my covering letter and my CV will be highlighting these next areas and focuses of work that I'm going to show you on the next few slides, because this is what my prospective employer will be expecting me to do as a project manager as part of my day-to-day project management role. Now, I have incorporated some graphics on here, and I'm aware I'm kind of talking to quite a few very good graphic designers who are a lot better at graphics than I am. I have difficulty with the concept of drawing a pair of curtains, let alone some flashy diagrams. So I have borrowed some from my official Prince 2 material, which is why you'll see the copyright notices appearing on the bottom, and some very cheesy clip art will appear at time to time as well. But what I'm trying to get over here with these next few slides is these areas of work that we need to focus on. When you're a project manager, you need to understand the people side of the work that you're doing, whether that is a small team or whether it's a big team. These people will come from three main areas. Okay, you've got business people, you've got users, and you've got suppliers. Each one will have their own agenda for what they want to get from the project. Yeah, the business wants to see the project help meet a strategic goal in the organization. Yeah, this is what we want to do. This will help us get there. Users, I'm always a bit careful about talking about users, because users, and I'm a user, and if I buy a new tablet device or something, and I'll wander into PC World or any other electrical store that might be available, as a user, I just go to the biggest one I can see with the greatest display with the fastest processor, and then my business side of my head kicks in and goes, hang on a minute, Russ, you see the price of that? And then then the other side is, well, it's too big for what I want, really. So then my business head brings me back, but my user head just wants me to go for the biggest, best thing. The thing is, whatever we deliver, the users are going to want to use, and if they don't use it, nothing will ever really get better. And what we're trying to do is make things better with our project. So users have to be satisfied to a certain level, as the business does. Suppliers also, who's making it, who's going to contribute to it, who's going to deliver whatever it is the project is making. And suppliers will have a whole ton of interest, from making money to just want to be involved with me. When I was at Coca-Cola and the NHS in particular, people wanted to work with us so that they could use our name on their marketing blurb to say, hey, we are suppliers to Coca-Cola, or we are suppliers to the NHS. Yeah, so they kind of lived off our brand image in their future development. So suppliers have a whole ton of interest why they want to get involved. But the important thing is, everybody will need to get something from the project. And as a project manager, I need to understand this. I need to know who these people are, because they will need communicating with. And communication is a big part of what we do on projects. We need to make sure that everybody on the project is engaged at the right level. I mean, I'm not going to swamp everybody with a whole ton of information every single day because not everybody would want that. So I need to identify this as a project manager and communicate and engage with the people accordingly. But one of the areas of work that we do as project managers. So that's the people side. Well, okay, if I've been asked to do something on a project, then why do we need this thing? Yeah, whatever this thing is, whether it's a piece of artwork, whether it's a bit of code, whether it's an application, whether it's a full IT system, whatever it is, why do we need this? We have to look at committing resource to a piece of work, money, people, time, effort, all of this. Well, okay, do we get a good enough return from that? So if I produced something, now I'm going to use an example here. I know this is quite topical from the last few years, but actually this slide exists for very much BC, this slide. But a project will produce something. Yeah, we do some research development. We look at perhaps patient symptoms and all the trial and error that doctors do to come up with a fix for them. We can do that as a pharmaceutical company, and then we could create a new medicine from that. And we can say, right, okay, here's the thing. Now, that'd be brilliant, yeah, if we did that and then we distributed it to pharmacies all over the country or the world or whatever. But if it just sits on the pharmacist on the pharmacist's shelf, you won't get any kind of benefit from it whatsoever, apart from the fact that it will catch some dust for you. So to get good things coming from what I produce on projects, I need to use them. My users need to use my new medicine. My doctors need to prescribe it. Because if a patient turns up with these symptoms, then doctors would trial and error many drug and therapy combinations until they find the right one. All of that's been done now. Yeah, we did that in the project to produce the new medicine. All the doctors now got to do is identify the symptom and go, well, we've got something for that. Here you go. Take 2 of these, come back and see me in the morning, kind of thing. So now we can treat our patients more effectively and we can treat them quicker. Well, yeah, so what? How does that make things better for us? We have to sort of have a measurable to say, well, this is the way it used to be, and this is the way it is now. So what we can see now maybe is a 25% reduction in the cost. Now, what we do is we balance that to the amount of resource we're putting into it. Say, is it worth it for doing this work to get that kind of benefit? Bearing in mind that also when we do projects, because we are doing change, so there is a downside to some of this stuff. Yeah, there are some disbenefits sometimes. Here we got 5% of patients that suffer minor side effects. So if you know somebody who's on this medication and that they've just taken it, don't stand downwind of them for the next hour or so, maybe. So sometimes there is some sort of minor side effect, but we balance all of this together. Now, as project managers, we need to understand this on the project, because if we lose any of this, if any of this becomes undesirable or unviable or unachievable, we should stop what we're doing, because we don't invest in something that isn't going to help us in some way. So as project managers, we're thinking about that too. So we've got people side, we've got the justification side. So, okay, what do we need to do then on this project? I mean, I know what it is I'm aiming for. I know what I've been asked for. How do I get that? How do I achieve that? Now, this is done on something called a plan. I know. Well, project managers plan, don't they? And it sounds such a boring thing to do, because planning is such an unnatural process. It's much more fun just to do something. And the nice thing about not planning is that failure comes as a complete surprise without being preceded by a period of worry and depression. Planning is a crucial thing for us. Actually, what plans do give us in any kind of environment, whether we're talking about projects or anything else, a plan will give you control, because if it's not going to plan, you'll know. So you can control what you're doing to either bring you back onto plan, or you can change the plan. Just because I've got a plan in existence, that was just my best guess of what I thought I was going to do when I started off this. If the situation has changed along the way, then maybe I do need to change my plan. It helps me to recover from any exception situations that may occur as I go through this particular piece of work. But they help me get there. I mean, if I need to replan, I replan. The crucial thing is the planning aspect of putting a plan together, because it identifies where I need to end up. It identifies what I need to create to help me get there. And it helps me to build on what I've already achieved as well. So planning is one of those crucial parts of what a project manager needs to do. What could possibly go wrong? What are the uncertainties about what we're doing? Now, there's a word for uncertainty in project management circles. It's known as risk. Risk is something that is generally thought of as something going wrong, which is why I titled the slide, "What could possibly go wrong?" But I could equally have said, "What could go right?" Because risk is just an uncertain element. We were kind of chatting about the weather a little bit earlier on, the way that it is quite warm today. And I just had a check on my weather app for tomorrow. There's a 50% chance it might rain tomorrow where I live. And I was just thinking grass could really do with a bit of water, and I don't really want to get out there myself in this heat and water the grass. So the fact that it could rain tomorrow is going to save me the effort and save my water company some water, because I'm fairly sure that's getting in short supply soon. So for me, the possibility that it might rain tomorrow would be a good thing for me. It would be a positive thing for me. But if I'm thinking about maybe driving to a course in the rain, I tend to think about that as a bad thing. So events can be seen by different people in different perspectives. So the important thing for us on projects is to identify what these things are. What could go wrong, what could go right. What's the likelihood? 50% chance it could rain here for me tomorrow. 50-50. Half and half probability. That's what we do with uncertain events. What's the likelihood? And if it does, how does it impact me? Is that low or high? And depending on that, depends on what I do about it. And if you hear the term of risk mitigation kind of floating around, this is what we mean. What are the responses we can make to it? Can I avoid it? Can I reduce it? Can I transfer it? Can I share it? Or if it's a good thing, how do I exploit it? I can win the jackpot on the lottery. I can guarantee winning the jackpot on the lottery. It's not rocket science. All I need to do is buy a ticket for every possible combination of numbers that comes out of the lottery machine. There's only 40 million different combinations, possibly around about that kind of number, at £2 each. That's only an investment of £80 million to make that happen. And this is where we need to think, do I really want to invest 80 million quid to win about 10? And also, if I had 80 million pound in my bank account, I would not be buying lottery tickets with it. And indeed, probably presenting sessions like this from my yacht in Monaco Harbour or something. So we need to think about how we do this. What are the right responses? What's the cost effectiveness of it? And then pick them and implement them. So there's a kind of a cycle to the way we do this. As project managers, we need to be able to identify these uncertainties and manage them and decide what we do about them. So another area we've got so far, we've got people, we've got justification, we've got plans, we've got uncertainty or risk now. So when I'm developing something, The next question for me is, what does it need to do? Yeah, okay, you've asked for something, but exactly what is it needs to do for you? Like I say, cheesy clip art. Actually, when I was putting this slide together a little bit earlier, my my girlfriend said to me, she looked at this picture and she said, "Do you know what? Out of all of those cars, I think I'd still want the yellow one in the middle. I think I'd still want the Beetle." And then the question then is, well, okay, but what if you're trying to set the fastest lap round Silverstone? You probably wouldn't need the Beetle. You'd probably need the Porsche on the left. Or if I live on a farm, um, and I need to drive around the fields, then the thing on the right is going to be the 4x4 is going to be the thing. Yeah, this is what we need to do as well. When we're on projects, to say, okay, what actually is what we call fit for purpose or quality? What does the end deliverable need to do for us? Because that's what we develop too. And it's different for different people. Yeah, it's different expectations. So when we're on projects, we need to capture this expectation from our customers and make sure we understand what we need to deliver so the customer gets what they're expecting. And it varies. So it's a crucial part of setting up the project in the first place. And indeed making sure all the way through that we are delivering to that. When I'm building something, if I'm doing some coding, for example, I would write maybe 10 lines of code and then maybe test it. And then after I've done maybe 100, I'll test the 100 all in one go. It's like when I was putting this slide set together, I'd create a slide, I'd put it in the slideshow. Does the animation work? Is that one slide doing what I want it to do? If it's not, I could just tweak it there and then. If it's not doing what I expected, then it's so much quicker to find the fault and to fix it at that time. And then when I've done 5 slides, run them all together. Do they work? Do they flow? Yeah, so that when I produce something, when the whole set is delivered, run through it end to end, does what I want it to do. Yeah, it's fit for purpose. And hopefully you folks will agree with me by the time we get to the end. But this is quality. This is what we need to do on the project to make sure that we do actually deliver something. Because don't forget, if we deliver something that is not useful, nobody uses it, nothing's going to get better. Yeah, so we need to identify what we need to deliver. The other thing we do as project managers as well, again, this is, I'm kind of talking through things that I would kind of use to promote myself if I'm going for a project manager role somewhere. So all that people stuff, the justification, planning, all of that will be emphasized in some way. Progress of what we're doing as well is quite key. How's it going? Because I would have had a plan. I would have mapped out at the beginning of my plan something like how much money I'm going to spend over that term. Now, the thing is, you could be as good at this as you like. You could be the best cash flow forecaster in the world, but you will never get it right at the beginning. You're always going to keep an eye on what's going on. You're never going to hit exact budget at exact time. Yeah, you will be some way either side of that. And when we manage projects, understanding these limits of variance that we're allowed around our plan is a really important thing of what we do. Because if I understand the landing pad, if this little orange box here is where I need to end up, then if I can see I'm actually getting there, I would map my actual progress against this. If I'm still ending up in the box, we're all good. It's a bit like when I did my first parachute jump when I was about 14 years old in the Air Training Corps. Back in the days when you could throw perfectly healthy 14-year-old children out of a perfectly serviceable aircraft with nothing more than a bit of silk to stop them from plummeting to earth. Before the days of health and safety got involved. We did this parachute jump thing, and as long as we were landing in the airfield, nobody was really that worried. It was only really if anybody saw us like floating over the trees on the other side of the airfield. That's when people started jumping into 4x4s with rescue equipment. Yeah, it's a similar thing with projects. If I can see in this red line situation here, if I can see I'm going to be outside of these limits, I will raise a report here and say, look, we are in an exceptional circumstance here. If things carry on the way they're going, we will end up outside of my given authority here. So I need to go to somebody for a decision. Understanding this is quite crucial for project managers because we only work within the authority that we're given. So as a project manager, I keep a track of this and I keep an eye on what's going on. And that, of course, as long as everything is going to the way we wanted it to start with. Because somebody at some point in the lifetime of this project is going to change their mind. And when you get a change raised, what I've found over the years is a lot of people think that, and IT in particular, whether it's operations, whether it's applications, or whatever it is, or whatever part of the IT service it is, if somebody asks for a change to a bit of IT infrastructure, they think we're magicians in IT. They think we're wizards and witches who can just wave a wand and go poof, and there it is, your new thing you wanted. Yeah. Because somebody will ask for something, you say, well, when do you want it? And they'll say, well, by about 9:45 it'll be fine. They think that the world in IT works with elves and gnomes and wizards and witches. It doesn't work that way. So we need to be aware of any change that's kind of raised to our project. We need to have some way of saying, okay, so what do you want? Working out how much it's going to be, how long it's going to take, and looking at what you get from the change. It's a bit like what we were talking about earlier with benefits and committing resource. Is it viable to do this? Yeah, is doing these changes, is it going to work out to be better for us? And is it in balance with the investment that we need to make? It will happen. And if you don't have a control mechanism around it, then you find yourself in chaos. And as a project manager, you need to be in control of this. So those are my areas. Yeah, those are my areas of project management. I would say if you're going to move into some kind of project management role, whether you're aiming for it or whether you end up in it, this is the work that you would be expected to do. Yeah, you need to know your people, you need to know your justification, you need to be able to plan, you need to be able to identify and manage your uncertainties. You need to track the progress of the work you're doing on the project to make sure it's going to still deliver within those boundaries around my elements like time, cost, quality, scope and stuff. And I need to be able to control the changes that will occur. So that's what I would expect project managers to do. And that's what project management is all about. Yeah, that's what you're doing as a project manager. There is a load more around this area, yeah, and it will depend on whether you're thinking about waterfall or whether you're thinking about agile, and what you're delivering and how big you're delivering. But 7 pointers to make sure that if you're doing project work, make sure you don't do anything without that justified reason. Yeah, make sure you understand the desirability, the viability, and the achievability of what you're doing in this particular piece of work. Don't do anything without that justified reason. If you don't have it before you start work, don't start the work because you'll just be wasting time. And if you lose this while the work is in progress, don't be afraid to stop. Yeah, just because I've started something, it doesn't mean to say I have to doggedly hang on to it right till the very end. If I lose the justification for doing something part of the way through the delivery of it, I will stop what I'm doing. Won't invest any more resource in doing it because that would just be, again, a waste of time. So don't do anything without a justified reason. Don't be afraid to fail. As they say to me, science is 99% failure. That's the way science works. You experiment, you try something. If it doesn't work out why. Fix it. Yeah? Change it. Don't be afraid to experiment. And when you move into environments that use frameworks like DevOps, for example, DevOps is something that is growing in popularity at the moment, where we're kind of working with collaborative teams on that kind of day-to-day basis. But it's where we work collaboratively together to develop things. One of the big parts of DevOps is experimentation. Yeah, try it. If it doesn't work. Find out why, fix it, try it again. Yeah, so don't be afraid to fail. Winston Churchill said the measure of success is the ability to move from one failure to the next without a loss of enthusiasm. Failing is how we learn. Yeah, I'm not afraid to give it a go and see what happens. Don't be confused about what you're doing either. Projects, and I've kind of focused a little bit on project management here. I'm very much talking around the role of project manager, but there's lots of other things that need to be done in project environments. Yes, somebody has to lead the way. Somebody has to do the work, because let's face it, managers manage. We don't do any work, but you need somebody to do the work. So everybody that takes part in a project will have responsibility for something. So understand what that is. Yeah, if you're put onto a project team, understand what it is you're there to do. Yeah, don't be confused about that. Don't just rock up to project events just to drink the coffee and eat the biscuits, because nothing's ever free. Yeah, you're there to do something. So don't be confused about that. Make sure you know what you're doing. Don't try the whole thing all in one go. Break it up into little pieces. Okay, do a little bit. See how you're going. Are you on the right track? Do you need to change anything? Do you stop what you're doing? Yeah, don't try and attempt the whole thing all at once, all in one go. I'm going to mention a program that's on TV. Some of you may watch this. I know I do, because it is a brilliant program to demonstrate how never to manage projects. It's called The Apprentice. If you've ever watched it, you'll see that most of the time those teams will fail, but they're actually set up to fail, because one of the big things that they do on that program to make it entertaining is that they do try and eat the whole elephant in one go. They do try and take it from beginning to end without having any guidance from any senior management roles. And 99% of the time it doesn't work, yeah, but it's entertaining. So don't try that. Yeah, break it up into smaller sections and do it a little bit at a time. Yeah, so you're constantly making sure that you are actually doing the right thing. Don't misunderstand those limits of authority either, where I was talking about checking those progress things. Understand those. If somebody gives you work, make sure you understand the time, the cost, the quality, and the scope of what you're expected to do. And also ask them if there's any variance. Yeah, if my boss would give me a piece of work to do, he'd probably ask it for next Friday. I might say to them, okay, is it all right if I deliver it by Thursday, or by the following Monday? And I'll either get a yes or a no. So I know that if there's going to be a deviation outside of those, I know I need to go to them and say, you said I had till, I couldn't have till Monday. You sure? Because this has happened, and I might need to work till Monday. Yeah. So understand this, because it makes sure that you have a cohesive and a collaborative way of moving forward, and you're not stepping outside your limit of authority, but you need to understand it. Don't run around without thinking of where you're going. Always identify what it is you are producing. Make sure you have a clear vision of where you're going. Don't just get on there and start hitting keys on a keyboard. Okay, because if you don't know where you're going, Any road will do, and you'll end up somewhere that you shouldn't be. So, and you're going to waste it all. You could have saved all that wasted time and effort by understanding where you needed to go to start with. So don't just dive into anything. Always sit and have a bit of a think. Yeah, always sit and think about where you need to end up, and don't just fill in the form because it's there. Don't always think. I mentioned the thing about making sure we've got justification, those outputs, outcomes, and benefits things. You know, this is what's generally referred to as having a business case. Now, if I mention the term business case, I don't know about you folks, I automatically think of a whacking great big thick document with lots of numbers in it. That's not necessarily a business case. I could write a business case on a sheet of flip chart paper with about 6 lines on it. Yeah, it doesn't have to be the biggest thing in the world. All projects are different. Some of them are very small, very uncomplicated, and not very risky. I don't need a whole ton of documentation for that. Now, my progress reports do not come accompanied with a full marching band. Yeah, they could be phone calls, quick 10-minute conversation with somebody. Yeah, don't just do something because it's in a framework. Don't let a tool manage your project. Yeah, don't let a piece of software manage what you're doing. You manage the situation. You think of how much work and effort needs to go into this particular piece of work. So don't just fill in the form because it's there. And I think that just about wraps it up from what I was going to present. A little bit about projects, what they are, a little bit about sort of project management and what we do as project managers. Thank you very much for listening. I'm really honoured you've all rocked up to listen to me waffle. You're all setting out on future careers. Whatever you do, whether you're a graphic designer, whether you're a coder, whether you're into projects, whether you move into the gaming industry in some way. I love people in the gaming industry because you make my dreams come true. As an 8-year-old child, I used to dream of being an astronaut, and I used to dream of being a motor racing driver, neither of which I managed to achieve. So, being able to fly in virtual reality in Elite Dangerous, for example, shooting pirates and visiting planets and galaxies, systems that no man has ever been to before, really kind of like makes my life fulfilled, really. The latest F122 has VR in it as well, so now I can really sit in the Formula One car and race in it. So whatever you end up doing, I really do wish you the greatest of success with it. I'm sure you will. But thank you very much for listening. I think Jordan might be picking some questions for me if there are any. But how are we doing, Jordan? Um, I can send them to somebody to put them up. Can I just? I'm just going to stop sharing for a while, if that's okay. Okay, I'll put me up on the screen. I know that's quite a frightening thing for a Tuesday morning, but hi everyone. Trying to do everything at once is a very common one. Not communicating either. Not kind of giving progress and talking to other people in the team is a big thing. What else would be on that? There's quite a bit on that list, to be honest. To be fair, but I think not asking. I mean, I was the first time I was ever asked to produce a business case, for example. My boss said to me, "I'll just go and do a business case for this, would you?" I'd never done one before, but I think I'd been in this job for 2 weeks or something, so I was still trying to impress the new boss. So I just went, okay, yeah, I could do that. Walked out of his office, and then my knees turned to jelly because I suddenly thought, oh, how do I do that? Um, so don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask. If you don't understand anything, there's always help and support within the groups wherever you are. It's a really important thing. Um, I would always look to a framework of some description. Okay, I'm trying very hard not to push things like Prince 2 because I sell it as a training course. So you might think, well, he would say that anyway. But um, Prince 2 is a really good sort of generic sort of project management framework. It does take a little bit of understanding. There is a website by the people that own it. It's owned by a company called Axelos, Axelos. They have a website that has some resource on it, like case studies and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, having some kind of framework, and it will depend on which organisation you end up kind of running projects in. Some organisations will try to also implement their agile techniques into their project management. So it may be worth having a look at an agile framework like Scrum, for example. Scrum's quite a popular one, and it's I think the Scrum guide's only about 20 pages long anyway, so that doesn't take very long to read. But that's more for the sort of development side of what happens in the project. But something like Prince 2 would be quite useful to have a look at. See all these little things whirring around, can't you? Um, Understand why. Um, the thing is, when you're in that kind of situation, and indeed it happens a lot when you're asking people to do work um, alongside their normal business as usual stuff, because you're asking them to do extra work just for you. They could often kick back with a, well, I haven't got time for that kind of thing. Um, in your team structure, you will have a group of people um, giving you work to do. Yeah, there's a number of different names for them, but steering groups, project boards, whatever. Um, and in that group of people, there will be somebody that can help you with that kind of situation because they'll be representing those people doing the work. So if you are finding that someone's not doing it, understand why. Have a conversation with them to see why it isn't. Because it might be simply that their business as usual stuff is overloading them at the moment. In which case, you would need to go to somebody and say, "Can you help with this?" You know, um, the some of the difficult things with project management, particularly when you ask somebody to do work, is that very typically on projects you don't have line management authority when you do that delegation. If I've got a team that I've employed that I'm the manager of, it's easier because I could just say, do that. Or can you do that for me, please? And there's a line management authority there. With projects, you don't get that so much because your teams of people come from different places and there's that line management authority doesn't exist. So when you delegate work or you ask for somebody to do work for you, there's no line management authority behind it. So you do need to understand what the issue is, why they are delaying, and if necessary, go to somebody and ask for some help for this. Yes, thank you very much. I love Trello as long as you understand how Trello works. Well, not so much Trello, but the underlying theory behind it, because it's part of what's known as Kanban. And Kanban is a way of pulling work through a system, but you have to limit what's in progress to make it work properly. But I use Trello all all the time, really, for different things, and it just allows me to be able to pull my it's a way of managing my to-do list in a way. Because to-do lists are all very fine, but when they get too big, they can get a bit overburdening. So I'll use Trello where I'll say this is my in progress stuff, but I'll only have three tickets in my in progress column, and I'm probably only got two in there anyway, just in case something else happens. I've got a bit of spare capacity in it. But by limiting the in progress is the way it works. But Trello, I find a very very useful tool. Yeah. Mm. On the project, it will be a group of people. They're known by different names. The ones I can repeat in a public forum are project board, steering group, or steering committee. Um, that will represent all of those three areas that I mentioned earlier: the business, the users, suppliers. But they will be a group of people that actually say yes or no to the project, as to if it kind of keeps going and stuff. So project manager reports to that group of people. Okay? The anticipation. Oh, crikey, that's a good question. Um, what would I know? Communicate properly. I think that was probably my big thing that I didn't used to do before. Um, is understanding that communicating with the team is because I used to think, well, if I kind of tell people what's going on, somebody will tell me I'm doing it wrong, and that was definitely the not the right attitude to have. So I think communication for me, I was always really bad at that when I first started. I would get a piece of work to do, and I would just go off and disappear somewhere, and I wouldn't tell anybody about how it was progressing, um, and that kind of thing. And then I'd come back with a result maybe a few months later, and somebody would say, "Oh, are you still working on that?" No, we decided not to do that about 2 months ago. So make sure there's a good communication framework set up within your project work, just so that everybody is aware of what you're doing and they don't think you've disappeared off into the sunset as well. Um, if it's a decision that is within your authority, then yes, I would go ahead. But if it's a situation where I am outside of those limits, um, I would need to keep pushing, and I would need to try and find some way of getting a decision from somebody. However, because it will work differently in different organisations. Um, but this is why it's really important to understand what your limits of authority are, because if you're within them, you can just crack on and do it. I mean, I think that graph I showed earlier on with the couple of actual lines in it, the red one, which was outside of cost, I think, was actually coming in early. Um, So I could take somebody out of the team temporarily. So it lowers the cost. So I'm within those boundaries. It extends the time a bit because I've got one less person on the project, but would probably still end up in my little window there of authority. Now I could do that on my own. I might go for perhaps ask if it's okay, just to double check. But if I don't get a reply, I'm doing it anyway because I'm within my authority to do that. So um, if that's the case, I crack on. It's just if it's outside the authority, I do need to find somebody somewhere that is going to help me with that decision. I will know who takes that decision within the project because it's part of the project structure that an individual is named as the decision maker at that project board level. So I know where I need to go. If there's no response from that individual, then I will know who is kind of above them, if you like. But I try not to do that. But if I'm not getting a response, I need a decision. So I will, whichever organisation I'm in, I will go and get it. Oh, okay. No, my pleasure. Great to be here. Thank you.